Today, I'm taking a look at the chest heart rate monitor from Suunto. .83 miles, 8 minutes per mile, running for the first time with a heart rate monitor from Suunto. Now, this isn't exactly the first time I've run with a heart rate monitor. It's the first time I run with this one. I used to run with a heart rate monitor back in the early 2000s, back before I even had a GPS watch. I got it mainly because my wife and I were going to the gym a lot together, and all the machines had the polar connectivity. So if I had a chest heart rate monitor, I could do it that way. And we were doing a lot of exercising, thinking about heart rate zones and things like that. I didn't really like it back then. And I haven't really, because of that experience, wanted to use a heart rate monitor since then. But over the past couple of weeks, especially as I was building up towards my BQ attempt at the Tunnel Marathon early June, I started looking at my heart rate a lot more. Other people, when I was posting some of my metrics on Instagram and my stories, were commenting on my heart rate data a little bit more, and it got me thinking more about the accuracy that I'm getting from the wrist-based heart rate monitors that are out there. Now, before I get too deep into the discussion, I do want to talk about some disclosures. The watch that I'm using right now is the Suunto 5. That was provided by Suunto for the purposes of review, but this heart rate monitor that I've picked up, that's something that I purchased for myself. They don't know that I'm making this video about the heart rate monitor, and they're not going to have any editorial input or get to see any of the footage before you guys get a chance to see it on YouTube. Now, with that out of the way, some of the things that led me to looking into the heart rate monitor a little bit more, in addition to a lot of you guys are doing heart rate training, which is something that I am curious about, and is consistent with some of kind of like my approach to marathon training. So it's something that it's kind of in my mind. I'd like to learn a little bit more about it. But as I was posting those workouts, especially as I posted the statistics from my actual BQ attempt, some of you guys were saying that those numbers were really, really high and asking if those were correct. And I've long thought that the numbers that were coming from the wrist-based heart rate monitor, and initially I thought it was because I do have a slightly abnormal cardiac rhythm. It's nothing that I don't have any sort of diagnosable condition. I only know it because after college, I would participate in a lot of medical studies. You get paid and they'll give you some sort of medication or subject you to some sort of study, a variety of different things. Great way to make money if you're willing to be a human test subject. And I couldn't participate in heart rate or cardiac studies because my baseline cardiac rhythm is outside of whatever the normal testing parameters are for those kinds of tests. So I have a slightly abnormal but normal cardiac rhythm. That's an aside. But for my wrist, for most of my runs were showing up in like the 180s and sometimes even in the 190s for my heart rate rhythms, at least for the beats per minute. And that was just kind of crazy. And so I started looking at it a little bit more specifically after the marathon, and as I was kind of recovering, getting back into the flow of things, and I wanted to do some easy runs anyway. And so I thought, what better way to do that than to try and regulate my pace, not by how hard I feel like I'm working or how fast I'm going, but by what my heart is doing. And so one of the first ones I did was a 12.3 mile run at 9 minutes, 2 seconds per mile. I tried to go very slow intentionally. My heart rate was high. It was in the high 170s the entire time, no matter how slow I wanted to go. And so some of those miles, I felt like I was in like the 930 range. Felt like I was really taking it easy, but the heart rate was still high. I thought maybe it's because, I'm still relatively close. I was like a week out from the marathon. Maybe that's what it was. But the following day, and then I did repeat the test again. And these two tests were with the Suunto 5. And the following day was a little bit faster, 6.51 miles at 7 minutes, 47 seconds per mile. So over 75 seconds per mile faster on average the following day. And then the heart rate was still pretty similar in the low 170s. And so that time I did have some sections where the heart rate I felt was like more sensible. It was in the 150s and 160s. And what I did was I tried to slam the wristwatch down a lot further. They say you have to have a finger between your wrist bone and the watch, and that's a lot harder to do, and it's harder for me to run that way. And whenever I do it, the watch, no matter how tight I cinch it down, it still wants to always slide up towards the wrist. And so I was constantly fighting it and moving it around, and I felt like I was getting no signal a lot of times. And so it was really annoying to just run that way. And that was kind of the last straw. And I was like, all right, I gotta start really running with the chest heart rate monitor if I want to take a look at this data. And so for the run footage that you just saw, the 10 miles, almost 11 miles, I was able to run, and I didn't really think too much about how hard was I running. I tried to run at more of just like a moderate pace to see kind of where that put me. And I ended up spending 50% of the time of this run in zone 2 and 42% of the time in zone 3. So a moderate pace run kind of put me in moderate heart rate zone, and it seemed to make sense. But that wasn't the only day that I really used this with. The following day, I ended up getting a really late start on the morning. The morning just kind of got away from me. And what was supposed to be a 6 or maybe 8 mile run only ended up being 4 miles because that's all I had time for. And even to get those 4 miles, I had to really squeeze it in. 4.42 miles at 7 minutes, 16 seconds per mile. So pretty much an accidental tempo run for the entire time. And that I spent 80% of my time in zone 4 and even 16% of my time in zone 5 with heart rate in kind of the 160s area. And so that's kind of my marathon race pace, just a touch slower than the Boston qualifying pace for me. And then I spent most of my time in zone 4. And I think that makes a little bit more sense. I went on yet another run with the heart rate monitor. So 3 total runs that we're looking at today. And that was over the weekend back at my in-laws' place, running along the Heritage Trail. Beautiful day for running out there. And I ran 13.38 miles, 8 minutes, 45 seconds per mile. This time trying intentionally to stay in zone 3 or zone 2. Didn't want it to get higher than that. I was trying to stay more towards zone 2 if possible. And I spent 55% of that time for that half marathon distance in zone 2 and the other 42% of it in zone 3. With the power number roughly coinciding with about 200 coinciding with that high zone 2 area. And so I felt like those numbers are a little bit more sensible. They make a little bit more sense. Whether they're completely accurate or not, I'm not sure. I think the only way to really test that would be to either stop and count my pace with, putting my fingers on the wrist, or by hooking myself up to some sort of EKG and a treadmill. But I'm not planning to do that at any point. So I think that for now, with that, I think that I like running with the chest heart rate monitor because I feel like those numbers make a little bit more sense to me. Whether I'm going to really start using that to kind of do heart rate based training, I'm not really sure. But for now, what I am going to do is, especially for my easy day runs where I know I don't want to be working too hard, I'd like to be able to look at both the power number and the heart rate monitor number. Maybe after a certain amount of time, I can get rid of the heart rate monitor again and just focus back on the power number that's coming from my Stride foot pod as a way of guiding me so I don't have to wear the chest strap, because it is a little bit more kind of to put on than it is like a little puck that you could put on your shoe. So maybe I can get rid of it, but for now I'm just going to kind of try to collect data for a little bit, see where the power number and the heart rate kind of coincide. Some of you have kind of suggested that it's not like a linear correlation, that there are some power numbers that I might be able to hit that is kind of a sweet spot in terms of my gait, my body, my level of fitness, that like a minimum like power to heart rate or a maximum power to heart rate ratio that I should be looking for. So those are some little things. Maybe there are some insights there that I can find as I take this for not only just easy runs, but for some of the harder runs. I'm going to try to do some faster work in the next couple of weeks leading up to my next race. So we'll see kind of how that goes. But so far, I'm very happy with the numbers. Putting it on is easy. Living with it is relatively easy. And we'll see where that goes. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about heart rate training or using the chest-based heart rate monitor versus the wrist-based heart rate monitor. I'd love to hear more about it from you guys, especially those of you who have been using it for a while. I'm still relatively new to it, just kind of figuring it out. But so far, I like the idea that I'm getting much more accurate data on a different and very important metric that a lot of you guys pay attention to on a regular basis. Before I go for today, I do want to talk about, we have a new charity runner for this week. And this week, the charity runner is Jerome DeCastro, and he's going to be running the Chicago Marathon and raising money for the Dystonia Medical Research Foundation. Now, dystonia is a neurological disorder that is characterized by excessive involuntary muscle movement. So a very difficult disorder. And that foundation is designed to help raise money for medical research and also to hopefully find a cure. I've already donated $70 to Jerome's fundraising efforts, and I'll post links in the description in case you'd like to learn more. Now that's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it to the end of the video, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
Yo, what's going on?